3 in the afternoon. You're sitting at your desk, and something happens that you cannot explain. Your eyes feel heavy. Your thoughts scatter. The words on the screen blur together, and you catch yourself reading the same sentence 4 times without understanding it. You need something. Coffee, a cookie, a piece of chocolate from the drawer. You eat it, and for 20 minutes you feel human again. Then the fog returns, thicker than before. You reach for more. This cycle repeats every single day, and you have accepted it as normal. You believe this is just how your body works. You believe some people have energy and some people do not, and you are simply one of the unlucky ones. But what if I told you that this exhaustion, this mental fog, this endless hunger that follows you through the day, what if none of it belongs to you? What if these symptoms were installed by something you eat every single day, multiple times a day, without even realizing how much? And what if in just 14 days of removing that one thing, you could meet a version of yourself you forgot existed? This is not about willpower. This is not about punishment or restriction, or becoming one of those people who refuses cake at birthday parties. This is about understanding what sugar actually does inside your body, hour by hour, 8, and then discovering what happens when you give your body a 2-week vacation from that constant assault. The changes that occur in 14 days without sugar are not subtle. They are not placebo. They are measurable, visible, and for many people life-altering. And the most surprising part is that the benefits have almost nothing to do with weight. Weight changes? Yes. But the real transformation happens in places you cannot see, in organs and hormones and brain chemicals that have been struggling under a burden you never knew you placed on them. Let me take you through what actually happens day by day, system by system. But first, you need to understand why you crave sugar in the first place. Because that craving is not a character flaw. It is a biological trap, and you walked into it without knowing the door was there. When you eat sugar, your blood glucose rises rapidly. This is not controversial. Everyone knows this. But what happens next is where the trap closes. Your pancreas detects this glucose spike and releases insulin, a hormone whose job is to escort glucose out of your blood and into your cells, where it can be used for energy. This sounds efficient. This sounds like good teamwork. The problem is the speed. Sugar enters your bloodstream so fast that your pancreas panics. It does not release a measured amount of insulin. It floods your system, trying to contain what it perceives as a dangerous situation. Because glucose, in high concentrations, is genuinely dangerous. It damages blood vessels. It glycates proteins. Your body treats a sugar spike the way it would treat a mild poison, something to neutralize as quickly as possible. So insulin surges, glucose plummets, and now you are in a state called reactive hypoglycemia, which is a technical way of saying your blood sugar crashed below where it started. Your brain, which runs almost entirely on glucose, sends an emergency signal. It does not politely request more fuel. It screams. And what does it scream for? The fastest possible source of glucose, sugar. The very thing that caused the crash now feels like the only solution to the crash. You eat more sugar. The cycle repeats. Spike, crash, crave, eat, spike, crash, crave, eat. This is not a failure of discipline. This is a hormonal loop that operates below conscious awareness. You are not craving sugar because you are weak. You're craving it because your hormones are manipulating you, and they will continue manipulating you until you break the cycle. This explains something that confuses many people. They eat a large meal, a meal with plenty of calories, and 30 minutes later they are hungry again. Not just mildly interested in food, genuinely hungry, stomach growling, mind fixating on snacks. They think something is wrong with them. They think they have no self-control, but the truth is simpler and stranger. When sugar dominates your diet, you are never truly fed. Your cells are starving while your stomach is full. Here is how this works. Insulin's job is to move glucose into cells. But when insulin is constantly elevated, when it is always circulating because you are always eating sugar, your cells start to protect themselves. They begin to resist insulin's signal. This is called insulin resistance. And it is not a disease that some people have and others do not. It exists on a spectrum, and almost everyone who eats a modern diet has some degree of it. Your cells are essentially saying, "We have had enough glucose, stop trying to force more in." So they downregulate their insulin receptors. They put up a wall. Now you have a problem. Insulin is elevated, but it cannot do its job. Glucose stays in your blood longer than it should. Your pancreas responds by releasing even more insulin, more resistance. The cycle deepens, and here is the part that most people never hear. Insulin does not just regulate glucose, it also controls whether your cells can absorb other nutrients, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids. When insulin resistance develops, your cells become locked. They cannot receive what they need, even when you eat nutrient-rich food. You are malnourished while overeating. Your body is desperate for fuel, so it makes you hungry. Constantly, relentlessly hungry. This is not greed. This is biochemistry. Sugar, in this way, is a nutrient thief. It does not just add empty calories, it actively blocks your body from using the good calories you consume. And the hunger it creates is not real hunger. It is artificial hunger, manufactured by a system that has been destabilized. Remove the sugar, and something remarkable happens. The hunger quiets. Not immediately, but within days. Real satiety returns. You eat a meal and feel satisfied for hours, a sensation many people have not experienced since childhood. This alone changes people's lives. The constant mental noise about food, the obsessive thinking, the guilt, the bargaining, it fades. And in its place comes a kind of mental peace that is difficult to describe until you feel it. But the first few days are not peaceful. I need to be honest about this. When you remove sugar, your body does not immediately celebrate. It protests. It has been running on quick fuel for years, maybe decades. It has become lazy. The cellular machinery required to burn fat efficiently has been neglected because it was never needed. Why would your body maintain those systems when sugar was always available? So when sugar disappears, there is a gap. Your cells have not yet rebuilt their fat-burning capacity. They are caught between fuel sources, and during this transition, you may feel worse before you feel better. Fatigue, headaches, irritability, brain fog thicker than before. Some people feel like they have the flu. This is sometimes called keto flu or sugar withdrawal, and it is real. It is your body scrambling to adapt. Inside your cells, little biological machines called mitochondria are being forced to change their fuel processing systems. New enzymes must be built. Metabolic pathways that have been dormant must be reactivated. This takes time, happening inside, not just cosmetically but metabolically. Your body is beginning to unburden itself. The first 3 days are typically the hardest. I tell people this up front because the ones who quit usually quit on day 2 or 3. They feel terrible and assume they are damaging themselves. They think the discomfort is a sign they need sugar, when actually it is a sign their body is finally beginning to heal. You're not failing when you feel bad on day 2. Your body is adapting. And anyone can handle 3 difficult days when they understand that the difficulty is temporary and the reward is substantial. By day 4 or 5, something shifts. The adaptation begins to complete. Your cells have started producing the enzymes needed to burn fatty acids efficiently. Ketone production increases. Ketones are an alternative fuel source made by your liver from fat, and your brain loves them. In fact, some research suggests the brain may function more efficiently on ketones than on glucose, certainly more stably. No spikes, no crashes, just a steady, clean-burning fuel that lasts for hours. People describe this phase as a fog lifting. They did not realize how clouded their thinking had become until the clouds parted. Colors seem slightly brighter, conversations are easier to follow, the ability to concentrate, to stay with a single task, returns after years of absence. This is not imagination. This is what happens when you stop feeding your brain a fuel that destabilizes it and switch to a fuel that sustains it. Mental clarity is not about motivation or trying harder. It is a fuel choice. Around this same time, another change becomes visible. Your body begins releasing water it has been holding. Sugar causes fluid retention. Every gram of glycogen, the stored form of glucose in your muscles and liver, holds 3 to 4 grams of water. When you stop eating sugar, glycogen depletes and the water goes with it. This is why people often lose several pounds in the first week without changing anything else. It is not fat yet, it is water. But it is significant water, and you see it. The puffiness around your face reduces, your rings fit better, your belly especially shrinks. This is important. The midsection is a metabolic signal. When your waist gets smaller, it often means something good is off. Speaking of the belly, let me tell you about what is happening inside it, in an organ you rarely think about, your liver. The liver is the metabolic control center of the body. It processes toxins, manufactures proteins, stores vitamins, regulates cholesterol, and manages blood sugar. It is essential, and in many people eating a modern diet, it is suffocating. Fatty liver disease used to be associated with alcoholism. Doctors would see it in people who drank heavily for decades. Now they see it in teenagers who have never had a drink. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease has become one of the most common liver conditions in the world, and the primary driver is sugar, specifically fructose. When you eat fructose, your liver has to process it. Unlike glucose, which can be used by nearly every cell in your body, fructose can only be metabolized by the liver. If you eat a little, the liver handles it fine. But if you eat the amount present in a modern diet, with its soft drinks, fruit juices, flavored yogurts, cereals, sauces, and hidden sugars in bread and pasta sauce, and almost everything else, your liver becomes overwhelmed. It converts the excess fructose into fat and stores it in its own tissue. This is fatty liver. It is usually silent. Most people with fatty liver have no symptoms until the condition is advanced. The belly fat you see on the outside is often a signal of the fat accumulating on the inside. When you remove sugar for 14 days, your liver gets a chance to breathe. Without new fructose arriving constantly, it begins to burn the fat it has stored. This process does not complete in 2 weeks, but it starts, and once it starts, it continues as long as you maintain lower sugar intake. People have reversed fatty liver entirely through dietary changes alone. The liver is remarkably resilient when you stop poisoning it. Below your liver sit your kidneys, 2 organs that filter your blood and regulate fluid balance. They are vulnerable to sugar damage, particularly in people who have any degree of insulin resistance or elevated blood sugar. High glucose levels damage the delicate filtering structures in the kidneys. This damage accumulates over years, often without symptoms, until kidney function is significantly impaired. Diabetics are at severe risk for kidney disease, but you do not need a diabetes diagnosis to experience kidney stress from sugar. Many people are walking around with subclinical damage they will not discover until much later. Reducing sugar reduces this stress. Kidney function often improves when blood glucose stabilizes. The filtration rate increases. The organs begin to heal. This is not something you feel directly, but it is happening. Your kidneys are thanking you in their silent, essential way. While your internal organs are recovering, another system is changing, one that people absolutely notice. Your skin. If you have struggled with acne, particularly as an adult, you may have tried every cream and cleanser and medication available. You may have spent hundreds or thousands of dollars. You may have been told it is genetic or hormonal or just something you have to accept. And yes, hormones are involved. But here is what most dermatologists do not explain clearly. Sugar directly manipulates those hormones. When you eat sugar and your insulin spikes, insulin triggers the release of other hormones, including androgens. In women, elevated androgens cause the skin to produce more sebum, the oily substance that clogs pores. Acne follows. This is why many women notice their skin worsens around their menstrual cycle when hormonal fluctuations are already occurring. Add sugar to that equation, and the skin pays the price. Remove sugar, insulin stabilizes, androgen levels normalize, and sebum production decreases. Within 2 weeks, many people see a noticeable improvement. Within a month, some see their skin clear for the first time in years. For men, the hormonal story is different but equally important. Elevated insulin is associated with lower testosterone. The mechanisms are complex, involving something called sex hormone-binding globulin, which increases when insulin is chronically high and binds to testosterone, making it unavailable. Men with high sugar diets often experience symptoms of low testosterone, fatigue, reduced muscle mass, low motivation, decreased libido, without understanding the connection. They think it is aging, sometimes it's just sugar. 2 weeks without sugar can begin to shift this balance. Testosterone becomes more available, energy returns, the body starts to feel like it belongs to you again. All of this metabolic chaos, the insulin spikes, the hormone disruption, the cellular starvation, it creates another problem that operates quietly in the background: inflammation. This word gets used so often that it has almost lost meaning, so let me be specific. Inflammation is your immune system's response to perceived threats. In acute situations like an infection or an injury, inflammation is helpful. It brings resources to the damaged area and initiates healing. The problem is chronic inflammation, a low-grade immune activation that never turns off. Sugar promotes chronic inflammation through several pathways. It increases inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein. It promotes the formation of advanced glycation end products, which are damaged proteins that trigger immune responses. It feeds bacteria in your gut that produce inflammatory compounds. It destabilizes blood sugar, which itself is an inflammatory event every time it occurs. You cannot feel inflammation directly, but you can feel its effects. Joint stiffness, unexplained aches, recovery from exercise that takes longer than it should, a general sense that your body is older than your age. Within 14 days of removing sugar, inflammatory markers begin to drop. Some people notice their joints feel looser. Morning stiffness fades. Old injuries that still bother them seem to quiet down. This is not coincidence. This is the immune system calming because you have removed a constant irritant. The long-term implications are even more significant. Chronic inflammation contributes to arterial plaque formation. It makes existing plaque unstable and more likely to rupture. Heart attacks and strokes are often inflammatory events. Reducing sugar does not guarantee you will avoid these outcomes, but it removes one significant contributor to the conditions that cause them. Now let me address something that surprises many people. The mood changes. We think of mood as psychological, as something determined by our circumstances, our relationships, our mindset. And those factors matter. But mood is also biochemical. It is influenced by neurotransmitters, which are influenced by blood sugar, which is influenced by what you eat. When blood sugar is unstable, mood follows. The spikes feel like brief euphoria, a rush of energy, a moment of pleasure. The crashes feel like irritability, anxiety, even depression. This cycling happens multiple times per day in someone eating a high-sugar diet. Their baseline mood becomes unstable because their blood chemistry is unstable. I have heard people describe sugar withdrawal as revealing anxiety they did not know they had. Then, once the withdrawal passed, they realized the anxiety was manufactured. It was never theirs. It was a symptom of a chemical imbalance that disappeared when the chemical cause was removed. Within 2 weeks, many people report feeling calmer, more even, less reactive to small stresses. They are nicer to be around. Their relationships improve because they are no longer riding invisible emotional waves all day. The people closest to them notice, sometimes before they do. Focus improves alongside mood. Sugar interferes with concentration in multiple ways. The energy crashes make sustained attention impossible. The inflammation affects brain function. The insulin resistance that develops in the body can also develop in the brain, impairing the neuron's ability to use fuel efficiently. Some researchers believe this is connected to cognitive decline and even dementia, though the research is still developing. What is clear is that removing sugar clears the mind in a way that no productivity system or meditation app can replicate. You cannot focus your way out of a brain that is poorly fueled. You have to change the fuel, about that fuel. When sugar intake drops significantly and stays low, your body produces more ketones. Ketones are not just an alternative fuel, they have additional benefits for the brain. They support the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that promotes the growth and maintenance of neurons. They provide energy to brain cells that may have become insulin resistant and therefore struggle to use glucose. They cross the blood-brain barrier easily and burn cleanly. Some neurological research is exploring ketones as therapeutic tools for epilepsy, Alzheimer's, and other brain conditions. You do not need to be on a strict ketogenic diet to produce some ketones. Simply reducing sugar significantly begins the process, and those ketones contribute to the mental clarity, the stable energy, the sense that your brain is finally working the way it was designed to work. 14 days is not a cure. I want to be clear about this. 14 days is a beginning. Some damage takes longer to reverse, some metabolic patterns are deeply entrenched, but 14 days is enough to see proof. It is enough to experience the difference between who you were and who you could be. It is enough to understand in your own body that sugar was never giving you energy. It was stealing it. Sugar was never making you happy. It was creating unhappiness and then briefly relieving it, so you would return for more. This is perhaps the most important realization. Sugar is not one problem among many. Sugar is the root. The obesity, the fatigue, the brain fog, the acne, the mood swings, the constant hunger, the joint pain, the hormonal chaos, the organ damage. These feel like separate issues. They get treated as separate issues. Doctors give you one medication for your skin, another for your mood, another for your blood pressure, another for your joints. But so many of these conditions trace back to the same source. Metabolic dysfunction caused by excessive sugar consumption over years and decades. You do not have 10 problems, you have one problem expressing itself in 10 ways. When you address the root, the branches begin to heal, not all at once, not completely in every case. But the trajectory changes. Instead of managing symptoms while the underlying condition worsens, you reverse the underlying condition and watch the symptoms fade. Some people ask about fruit. They worry that removing sugar means removing all sweetness from life forever. Whole fruit is different from added sugar. The fibre in fruit slows absorption. The nutrients provide value. In moderate amounts, most people tolerate fruit well, especially berries, which are lower in sugar than tropical fruits. The problem has never been an apple. The problem is the soft drink, the pastry, the hidden sugar in bread and sauce and yogurt that markets itself as healthy. The problem is the sheer volume. The average person consumes far more sugar than their body was ever designed to handle, and most of that sugar is invisible, added to processed foods to make them more palatable, more craveable, more profitable. Reading labels changes everything. Once you start looking, you find sugar everywhere. Tomato sauce, salad dressing, bread, peanut butter, protein bars. Foods that present themselves as savoury or healthy often contain more sugar than desserts. This hidden sugar keeps your insulin elevated, keeps the cravings active, keeps you locked in the loop even when you think you are eating well. Awareness alone begins to shift your choices. You do not need to be perfect. You need to see clearly. The first 3 days require only one thing: survival. Get through them knowing they are the worst of it. Drink water, eat meals with protein and fat that satisfy you. Sleep as much as you can, because sleep supports the metabolic transition. Do not expect to feel good. Expect to feel like you're fighting something, because you are. You're fighting a biochemical pattern that has been running your body for years. After day 3, the clouds begin to part. Your energy becomes more stable. Your hunger normalizes. You might notice you go hours without thinking about food, which may feel strange at first, like a constant noise has stopped and the silence is unfamiliar. By the end of the first week, the water weight has shifted. Your clothes fit differently. Your face looks different. People might comment, and you will know something real is happening. By day 14, the full picture begins to emerge: the mental clarity, the stable mood, the absence of cravings, the sense that food is fuel rather than compulsion, the realization that you have more energy at 6 in the evening than you used to have at 10 in the morning. The strange discovery that afternoon does not have to mean exhaustion. That night does not have to mean guilt and promises you cannot keep. This is what 14 days without sugar offers. Not restriction, freedom, not punishment, release. Not another diet that asks you to fight your body. An understanding that allows you to work with it. And once you have lived inside this freedom for 2 weeks, you face a choice. You can return to the loop. Nobody will stop you. The sugar will always be there, waiting. Or you can extend the experiment. Another week, another month. You can discover what happens when your liver continues to heal, when your hormones fully stabilize, when the inflammation drops further, when your brain operates on clean fuel for so long that the old fog becomes a distant memory. Some people tell me they never knew they were sick until they felt well. They had normalized their fatigue, their brain fog, their mood swings, their constant hunger. They thought that was just life. They thought that was just getting older. They thought that was just who they were. And then they removed sugar for 2 weeks and met someone they had forgotten. Someone with energy. Someone with focus. Someone who could sit through the afternoon without reaching for anything, because nothing was missing. That person is still inside you. Sugar buried them, but it did not destroy them. 14 days is enough to begin the excavation. 14 days is enough to see proof that another way of living exists. What you do with that proof is up to you. But at least now you know. The cravings are not your weakness. The hunger is not your greed. The fatigue is not your fate. These are symptoms of a single root cause, and the root can be removed, not through willpower, through understanding, through 2 weeks of giving your body what it actually needs, which is the absence of something it never needed at all. The fog will lift, the hunger will quiet, the energy will stabilize, and you will wonder why you waited so long to discover what was waiting on the other side of those 14 days.